The global warming deniers persist in this air of unreality. After all, the entire North Polar ice cap, which has been there for most of the last 3 million years, is disappearing before our eyes. 40% is already gone. The rest is expected to go completely within the next decade. What do they think is causing this?
That's former Vice President Al Gore on Andrea Mitchell Reports today, talking about people who don't believe that the climate is affected by the activities of humans. And he included, David, Sarah Palin in that. And that is because Palin wrote an op-ed in today's Washington Post in which she says President Obama should boycott the climate change summit happening right now in Copenhagen.
Yeah, here's what Palin wrote. Instead of staying home from Copenhagen and sending a message that the United States will not be a party to fraudulent scientific practices, the president has upped the ante. Without trustworthy science and without so much at stake, Americans should be wary about what comes out of this politicized conference. The president should boycott Copenhagen. That brought this response from Tim Lambert on scienceblogs.com. Quote, "The Washington Post simply does not care about the accuracy of the columns it publishes. The Washington Post report does not support any of the false claims in Palin's paragraph. If they are not going to do even the most perfunctory fact-checking on the stuff they publish, what value do they add?" Here to make their case are liberal blogger Peter Slutsky from DoubleSpeak.com and conservative blogger Matt Lewis from PoliticsDaily.com. Matt, I'm going to start with a very easy one to you. Sarah Palin, you will acknowledge that she was for a type of cap and trade when she was John McCain's vice presidential candidate, right?
You know, I think that she did come out at least.
Okay, so she's flip-flop. Just so we have that on now. Now, as far as what she said in the Washington Post, what do you make of it?
I think it's great. I think that that Sarah Palin is making a very good argument, and I will say my experience in politics has been that they don't attack you unless your argument is working. I mean, if Sarah Palin's arguments are absurd, then liberals should be encouraging her to be out there more. I think that we should encourage vigorous debate, and I think that sort of they're working the refs and trying to perhaps push the Washington Post to censor conservative viewpoints in the future. Frankly, the Washington Post needs more conservative diversity right now. And so I think that it was great that Sarah Palin's out there speaking out on this issue, and I think that liberals should welcome her into the debate of ideas. And by the way, there are plenty of scientists, Sarah Palin's not alone, there are plenty of scientists who question global warming, question whether or not it's man-made. A lot of them believe in climate change but don't think it's man-made. And some of them just think, hey, this is a debate worth having.
Matt, I think the point, though, is that where does she, again, really stand here? Because in this piece that she wrote, she says, we can't say with assurances that man's activities cause weather changes. And to David's point, here's what she said to Katie Couric about the same thing.
There are man's activities that can be contributed to the issues that we're dealing with now with these impacts. I'm not going to solely blame all of man's activities on changes in climate because the world's weather patterns are cyclical, and over history we have seen changes there. But kind of doesn't matter at this point as we debate what caused it. The point is, it's real. We need to do something about it.
It's real.
Yeah.
Peter?
Well, I mean, one of the things I would say is that something major happened between the time Sarah Palin said that and today, and that is this climate gate, these emails, which, I mean, I have one in front of me.
Come on, man. I know what changed. It has nothing to do with the emails. I'm cutting you off right there. I'm cutting you off. Peter, go ahead. Take it away.
Thank you. I mean, first of all, someone hacked in and found some old conversations that detail a lot of different things. Look, we've been having this conversation, scientists, the American public, the world community, for 20 years or more. And we've come to a consensus that global warming is real. First of all, Sarah Palin is confusing the weather and the climate, which is fine. And as a liberal, Matt, I will encourage her to get out there and keep espousing her beliefs, especially when her beliefs differ from the belief that she had last year during the presidential campaign. So, you know, this just doesn't make sense to me.
Peter, what about the criticism the Washington Post is getting for basically this is what she said on Facebook, and now you're putting it in this newspaper? That's the other part of the story. A lot of people are upset because they say it is essentially duped over from Facebook.
Right, exactly. So how this all played out is, a couple days ago, Sarah Palin put a Facebook note on her page, which got a huge reaction and huge response. And then the Washington Post basically allowed her to reprint that as an op-ed in the Post. That doesn't make sense to me. This is the Washington Post we're talking about. And yes, maybe they do need more conservative voices. And yes,
absolutely,
they should allow her to be an op-ed writer for the Post, but only when it bears out in facts. This is not factual, and everything you said about
your
the contradictions.
definition of fact is liberal dogma. There are plenty of scientists who question global warming. A lot of folks believe in climate change, and by the way, liberals 20 years ago were talking about global cooling. I think that we had a little ice age a few hundred years ago. I mean, clearly there is climate change, but the notion that the scientific community is unanimously believing that there is global warming and man-made global warming is a fallacy, and clearly they faked.
I think
they were trying to hide. And
there may be a 95% to 5% divide in the scientific community, but there's a 99% unanimity among economists who say that if they impose what they're talking about in Copenhagen, you're talking about a maybe $50 billion a year drag on the global economy out of a $15 trillion global economy. In other words, the impact will be so minuscule that it'll be far less than a lot of other concerns.
Plus, that's not to mention the national security implications of what they're talking about in Copenhagen. That's not to talk about the domestic jobs and the international jobs that can be added to the rolls if we do, add green jobs throughout the world.
And let me tell you, the jobs in Ohio that are going to leave, the jobs in West Virginia that are going to leave, and at a time where we have a 10% unemployment rate, President Obama should be concerned about jobs in America. And frankly, I think he's taken his eye off the ball there.
Well, I think the other issue, though, is yes, some jobs are going to leave, but other jobs, to Peter's point, can be created if the United States does this right. Peter Slutsky and Matt Lewis, thank you both for coming on. Great stuff as always.
Thank you.
David, just